Hi, team. This is your coach, Dane Deutsch, and I want to be able to share with you today some really interesting thoughts in terms of technical performance and character. I want to introduce you to something I call the Tricycle Effect. And in order to do that, I want to be able to share with you a blog that I recently wrote and compare that with a Simon Sinek video that I also saw recently. So my blog is called the Ararat Connection, and the whole idea here is to be able to contrast and compare what is performance and how does that compare with trust. More importantly, is performance more important than trust? So I'm going to go through my blog here and give you an illustration of some of the things that I think are pretty important in terms of hiring people for your business, as well as being able to bring people on your team. Maybe you're not the person who hires, but maybe you're the person who has to onboard. So again, welcome. I'm Coach Dane, and I'm your character builder coach. Being that I was a U.S. Air Force veteran, and the military is always leading and on the cutting edge of leadership thought and skills, I thought you might enjoy this video teaching by Simon Sinek. So I encourage you to go to this prompt right here, which is inside the blog, and I'll post this link to the video in the blog as well. But it would help if you watch that video first. It's a very short video, but it gives you a good understanding of what Simon is talking about when he contrasts performance versus trust in a graph. And so he does that by looking at a SEAL Team 6 performance in terms of what does it take for the SEAL Team 6 people to be chosen and or make it through their training. And so it's a great way for him to highlight what is needed to build a high performance team. So in that video, and I recreated a simple diagram of what Simon was saying. So on this side of the performance graph, on this side of the graph, we see the word performance. On the bottom of the graph, we see trust. So obviously, if you have a low performer, that's what LP stands for, and a person with low trust, they're in this lower left quadrant. If you have a very high performer, but low trust, they're going to be in this upper left-hand corner quadrant. And of course, if you had somebody with high trust but very low performance, medium performance with high trust, and high performance with high trust, those all indicate different eligibilities for people based on their performance versus trust. What we all really want is a high performer with high trust, and that is the ideal. Most of the time, we're not going to get that kind of person. And what Simon talks about in his video is that the SEAL Team 6 would rather have someone who is a medium performance and high trust than somebody is high performance and low trust, because one is on the battlefield and one is off the battlefield, and he does a great job of explaining that. So I teach exactly what Simon is sharing in this video, both as an instructor full-time at UW Stout in Menominee, teaching cyber technology ethics, and as a coach, entrepreneur, and business owner at the Leadership and Management Development Center in Character in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. My take is a little bit different than Simon's, however, but I build on what Simon says. So Simon's discussion of the concept of Team SEAL 6 performance runs parallel to the illustration of the Competence Wheels in a book I authored entitled The Tricycle Effect. If you visit the Tricycle Effect book on Amazon, and I put a link in this blog for you to be able to do that, you can read the foreword in the first chapter for free. The first chapter will give you a complete outline of the Tricycle Effect itself, what the character wheel is, what do those spokes stand for, and what are the back two wheels in terms of competence, and what is the seat of courage, or what I call the seat of choice to make the courageous choices in life. So if I take the graph that Simon was talking about there and just overlay it with my Tricycle Effect graph, you can see that the trust side of the graph that Simon is referring to is what I call the character wheel. So trust was at the bottom of his graph, and I replaced that with the character wheel. And on the left-hand side, I replaced his performance with competence, because the back two wheels on the tricycle, one of them is a technical wheel, being able to like maybe build a website or write a paper or be able to make change, any of those kinds of things. And then you also have on the other wheel, the small wheel in the back on a tricycle, is the people wheel, like communications, teamwork, critical thinking skills, and those kinds of things. So together, the technical wheel and the people skill wheel form the competence wheels. And so I put the competence wheels over here because he refers to those as the performance wheels. Most of the time, that's where most businesses spend their time, either giving you performance evaluation reviews or whatever, is based on how good was your technical wheel. Maybe some about the performance with the people skills. How well do you get along with colleagues? Do you encourage others and so forth like that? But very seldom do we have anyone actually measuring character, or in the case of what Simon talks about, trust. So again, in these 4 quadrants, you have the person who has low competence and low character. Character I made a CH. You also have maybe a person who has high competence with low character. And you then in the far right-hand corner, the ideal person has high competence and high character. And in the lower right-hand corner quadrant, you have low competence and high character. So if someone can't write a letter, even if they have great character, their competence is low. What we really want is probably, just like Simon said, someone who has medium competence but high character. We can trust that person not only on the playing field or in business, but off the playing field or outside of business. So to sum that up, basically I like to say that performance is to competence as trust is to character. And Simon says almost no one is measuring the trust factor. That is the sad truth. And yet, that is the most important skill we all need to grow, the character skill. We need to be measuring character in our organizations as a critical part of our performance evaluation as well as in the hiring process. Nothing is more important than getting the right people on the team or the bus, so to speak, by hiring primarily for their character skill. And yet, there are very few HR people that even talk about character. It takes a lot of courage, remember that tricycle seat, to make a decision to hire for character. In the 40 or so years that I have been in several businesses, including as an officer in the United States Air Force, I never fired anyone for technical skills. However, almost 100% of the time, I would say I fired people for character skills. So we definitely seem to have it all wrong. We need to hire for character and train for the competence. Even Warren Buffett says, quote, and this quote comes out of a quote from Inc.com. He says, quote, "We look for 3 things when we hire people. We look for intelligence, we look for initiative or energy, and we look for integrity. And if they don't have the latter, the first 2 will kill you. Because if you're going to get someone without integrity, you want them lazy and dumb. In other words, if they don't have integrity, it might be just the opposite and they'll hurt your organization more than help you. You could look at his intelligence as being your IQ, like the technical skill. You could look at the initiative and energy as being more like the EQ or the emotional quotient or skill, meaning the people skill. And then, of course, the integrity is the character wheel. So what Warren Buffett is really telling us, what he's really encouraging us, is to hire people for character first and then train for the technical, or in this case, the intelligence and the initiative and energy. So we need competence, yes, intelligence and initiative and energy. But more importantly, and this is the big but, we need character, which leads to trust, even more so, especially within our teams. So if you want to learn more about how to develop your character skills, then visit me at my website at www.lmdc.us, or you can also find me at www.thetricycleeffect.com. And if you just search for the hashtag the Tricycle Effect, you'll find me out there. So I want to encourage you again to lead with character first. That's the primary way you're going to find real success, and even more than that, real significance in life. So until next time, keep leading with character first. Trike On. This has been Coach Dane. Thank you.